Greetings. We are making an impromptu video, and someone in our ministry asked if we could do a video about addictions and what to do to overcome addictions. And it's something I think Cherie and I both have a good knowledge base with from our challenges we've had to overcome in different areas. But it's something that also we could talk about biblically and scripturally, especially with the studies that we've done, and give you an actionable plan to use. And addictions are actually all across the board. You could be addicted to someone, as your safe person. You could be addicted to food. I've been addicted to food for a long time. It's just whether or not you're willing to address it. You could be a little puppy.
He's so cute.
Oh, he is cute.
It's a little baby corgi.
He was cute. Yeah, you could be addicted to, anything and everything. So the question is what is an addiction? Because, people throw it out there loosely, like I have an addiction to, and then they throw it out there what they're addicted to. But let's start with a question that's easier than that. What is an addiction? Because I thought about this for an hour today. I did some studies, and I have an idea of what I want to say an addiction is. But you've dealt with it. I've dealt with it. What do you see it as after having conquered a lot of that in your life?
An overpowering hold over your life.
There you go.
An unbreakable.
So I want to extrapolate that in terms of biblically speaking. I was going to tell you, don't look at it as an addiction, because when you change the way you look at it, you change the way you relate to it. It's actually a satanic attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's called persecution in the Bible, oppression. It's a bondage. It's an attack. So if you say I have an addiction, you're lying. You don't have an addiction.
And you're holding that I have mentality.
Yes. Because here's the thing, if you knew better, right, you wouldn't. Otherwise, you wouldn't be thinking the word addiction altogether, because the connotation is that you're weak. The connotation is that you can't overcome something, and that something has a power and a stronghold over you. So therefore, we know that those are all lies, because you have to understand, first of all, what an addiction is, and second of all, what are you? They always say in Christian Science, first think about what is God, and then what is man, and then what is the relationship between God and man. Well, I like to throw out the word, just start with the lie first, because it's an addiction. Well, we know that man can't have an addiction, but I like to spin the story even further from that and say, well, it's not an addiction. You're being attacked by an external kingdom. It's an oppressive imposition coming to you in thought. It's the mind of this world trying to hoist itself upon you.
The serpent.
It's the serpent hissing at you. Now, that's great. You say, well, that's really fun. Now I've got an idea of what it is. What do we do with it? Well, I can tell you what I've done. And, this has to do with, it happened to me in a fleeting moment after 5 years of having what they used to call bulimia, right? I used to have to do the binging and purging. Nothing would ever break it. I tried for 5 years. No counseling, no drugs, no hypnotherapy, no supplements. None of that stuff worked. All the human reasoning and all the human theories were just useless. But then there was something that did work. And then it was literally gone. And it took me 3 weeks to realize that it was totally gone. By the time I realized it was gone, God removed it. So the question is, how do you get God to remove that thing?
Letting go of personal ego. Because I remember to the day when I finally gave up drugs and alcohol, I said, I, Cherie, can't do this anymore. And within minutes, I mean, it just was like poof. Okay, this is what's going on. This is what's going to happen. This is where you're going. I didn't have a clue.
So you found it through surrendering,
Humiliation,
through
the meekness,
the humility. Probably a level of humiliation too from the human standpoint.
Oh, for sure.
But humility definitely is a positive draft of that. An updraft is humility.
Throwing in the towel, thinking that I could do anything for myself anymore because Cherie's way wasn't working.
Now, so it doesn't really matter what you're struggling with. It could be alcohol, it could be drugs. It could also be some people struggle with gambling. Some people struggle with bad relationships. They go from one to the next and it's the same person, just they look different, but it's the same bad relationship. It doesn't matter what the cycle is. The cycle is held in place, and I learned this from Dr. Mike Murdoch, by guilt and shame. Guilt and shame and fear, yes. Whenever you feel shame or guilt for committing an action, you will repeat that action. As long as you know you're working with that, I think that's key number one. I want to break it into keys that you can use and then give it a take-home strategy.
I feel fear is the biggest one. What do you fear about letting go of whatever it is you're addicted to? Personally, I can just say the change. Or the fear of the withdrawal, the fear of...
You're right there. Because here's the idea. What the machinery of the mind is doing is it is telling you this addictive behavior is going to prevent you from feeling something else that we think is far more dangerous than what you're going to get as a consequence for doing this. Yeah, this drug could end up killing you. However, in the immediate now, the emotional pain that we're going to get rid of by giving you this drug is far more beneficial. There's something underneath it, and it's emotional.
Yeah.
There's an emotional underpin to every addiction. There's always an emotional underpin because you're taking an external action to cover it up. So if you realize that the addiction, what you'd call the addiction, is a substitute, then you will see it for what it actually is. It's, in fact, trying to be a solution, but creating another problem because it's not a win-win solution. It's not a God solution. It's an earth solution.
And it's like covering up shame, guilt. It's a lot of oppressed feelings where you go from one thing to the next and it just snowballs. And before you know it,
it's a feeling that you've been separated from the source of that complete love. And so in that sense of separation, there's always a yearning to be complete. And the only true completion is through spirit, through spiritual understanding. And in the Eastern religions, they'd call it the city consciousness. You reach enlightenment through the higher consciousness.
So I have something pulled up in spirit, that spirit is divine substance, mind, divine principle, which is all that is good, God, that which is only perfect, everlasting, omnipresent, omnipotent, and infinite.
Right.
So you've been separated from what already is because you're not allowing the true nature.
So the addictive cycle is an immature response because the completely ascended response would be to reatone yourself to spirit, because then there would be no pain, no suffering. There'd be no cause for any compensatory action of I need to fulfill, because you're already fulfilled. Because in spiritual awareness, you are completely fulfilled. You're not lacking love. You're not lacking beauty. You're not lacking approval. You're not lacking any of the wants that people run to addictions for. They want, so therefore they strive. They immaturely try to grasp something to fulfill a void. And spirit is the answer, but it's not that simple. Otherwise, you could just tell somebody, spirit's the answer, and they'd be like, well, you're right. And they would just drop the bottle, and they'd be like, it's over. But they're not just going to do that. But I remember the talk by Joel Goldsmith when he said that a woman came to him, and the woman said something about her husband being a strong alcoholic. And she was so upset because he was hitting the bottle hard all the time. And he said, I'm going to treat you, not him. Now, can you imagine what she might have thought at the time? Like, well, he's the drinker. Why are you going to treat me? And she's like, well, what? He's like, well, your belief that him drinking is good or bad versus whatever you're doing. He says, you put good and bad in the alcohol. He says, there is no good and there is no bad. And he said, once we remove that, there won't be a problem anymore. And so they treated that. And then he naturally just gave up the bottle a short time after. He said, I find no pleasure in this anymore. That right there, and I've heard it countless times in the Christian Science testimonials, is when you come to the realization that there is no pleasure in any material substance, you remove the urge that causes you to reach for it.
Oh, that made me think of something good that was in... Keep going.
Okay. Sorry. So one of the keys here is, remember, the key number one is whenever you have guilt and shame attached to something, you're going to repeat that action, okay? Whenever you're thinking that there's pleasure in a substance or pain, pleasure or pain, you're giving it godlike power. You're putting the power of God into the substance, the material thing, which is empty. The power is not in there. The power is in mind. So you take it and put it back in mind, and then put it back in its proper place. All power belongs to Christ, to spirit. There's no power in a bottle. There's no power in alcohol. There's no power to give me pleasure in sugar. There's no power to give me pleasure in anything. Even in greed. There's no power in having a lot of material stuff. There's no power. So once you remove that power, you remove the addictive urge. And you have to do that in your thought.
I love how Mrs. Eddy puts it. This speaks directly to addiction. If mortals are not progressive, past failures will be repeated until all wrong work is effaced or rectified. If at present satisfied with wrongdoing, we must learn to loathe it. If at present content with idleness, we must become dissatisfied with it.
And that spoke to you.
It very much did. Because you may be in the spot with your addiction where you're just, I don't know what to do, right? You loathe. And you're idle. You become very idle because you're plateaued in your addiction where just enough isn't, one is never enough and one is too many because you'll keep going. And if that idleness, you become so dissatisfied with it, it becomes tasteless. It's so dissatisfying. It's not even, it will fall from you.
Well, this is what I remember, and I'm gonna reiterate this. The very last time that I was binging and purging, I was at a New Year's party, and I was already contemplating spirit. I was really getting into the spirit. So as the cycle began, the urge came over me. I felt compelled, like I was carried away in that slumber of drunkenness, literally. I had had alcohol, and it was causing me, I was like, I'm going to stuff my face and I'm going to end up throwing up. But at this time, I stopped looking at it as if it had a life of its own. I said, this is not a thing. It's not a bulimia. Well, there is no bulimia. I said, this is just a behavior that has no meaning whatsoever. So I took the meaning out of it. And that's key number 3. Take the interpretation that you've assigned to it and strip it of all of its good and evil power. It means nothing. You must do this. I did this, and then I just observed it. So as I was going along, I just became conscious that I was spiritual, and I was watching all this happen, but it wasn't really me. So my mind was stayed on spirit. And I was also giving love to myself while receiving it from God. I was letting myself be loved, even while the action was taking place where that had never been done before, because it was always guilt and shame and punishment every time when I was done. So I was letting myself be in the receiving of love, even while I was doing the actions. I remember just hitting the food hard, walking over to the toilet, doing the thing. And then when it was all done, I'm like, it didn't mean anything. I'm like, there is no bulimia. It doesn't even exist. There's only spirit, and I'm spirit. I kept thinking that the whole time. The next morning I woke up, something changed, and I knew what it was. I had no guilt and shame. I didn't feel bad. I didn't hate myself anymore. I gave myself my own comfort by allowing myself to see the truth. That even though all that took place, in my spiritual consciousness, nothing took place. And I saw it. I saw that nothing actually happened because God didn't create it. And I saw that. And it was gone after that. And that's the account of virtually every Christian Science healing you ever hear about, is turning thought to spirit, contemplating God.
Your highest concept of God.
And
your highest concept.
Yes, that's what neutralizes the line of force, according to F.L. Rawson. Because isn't an addictive urge a line of force? That's all it is. So an addictive urge, whether it's gambling, pornography, sugar, food, sex, drugs, lying, cheating, stealing, whatever your addiction is, it's not yours, first of all. Second of all, guilt and shame don't belong to you. It belongs to the mind of this world that has the problem, which is not you. And third, it's a line of force trying to impose itself upon you. And you have to loosen your tension, your string, so that it can't play you anymore. And then you reverse that line of force by, you said it, thinking of
your highest concept of God.
The whole time.
Your highest concept.
Because it's happening in your consciousness.
Mm-hmm. That divine truth will come to you. Use what you have, not what you think somebody else would say or want, or it will come directly to you.
That was exactly what I did. When I look back on it, I was thinking of my highest concept of God, even while it was happening. And you see, when you think of your highest concept of God, you can't hate yourself anymore.
No.
You can't blame yourself. You're not guilty. You're innocent. You have to know this. It's not you. It's the mind of this world. It's an impersonal mind looking for a host. And it latches on to whoever will be obedient to it. And so the moment you fear it, in Nag Hammadi Library, it talks about it, the gospel of truth, the 5 steps that it comes into your life is fear, confusion, lack of trust, double-mindedness, and division. That's 5. Those are the 5 ways it comes right into your experience.
The 5 senses.
Fear. Step number 1. What do you fear? Well, everybody that's an addict fears that they have no power, no control. That's good because you never did. God's in control of his whole creation, everything in it. You're not supposed to have control. He's got control.
Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the path.
So you you rest on that God's in control. But here's the strategy, though. The strategy was really simple. Look back at when you let go, right? Mm-hmm. Were you thinking of your highest concept of God?
Oh, yeah. It's like, God, please.
So that was your highest concept.
Please, whatever your will for me is, I need you to show me, because Cherie can't do this anymore. And at the time, I wouldn't really say I was going to church because I was ashamed, because I was, drinking and doing drugs, so I dare not step foot into a church.
But that was your highest concept of God. That's all that matters, because it was happening in your consciousness.
Yeah.
So for you listening, whatever's happening, it's happening in your consciousness.
Yes.
So to turn away from trying to figure out how to improve it, you don't improve it.
You don't.
There's nothing to improve. God didn't create it. You're dreaming. It's an illusion. Number 2 is you stop allowing guilt and shame in the door, because that will repeat the action. And number 3, it's all done by thinking of your highest concept of God.
And it's already over.
Stay in that concept. Even if you're swept away in the urge, don't let your mind leave your highest concept of God, ever. And as long as you do that, because I was swept away in it, I was swept away that night, but I didn't let my mind leave that highest concept of God. Mm-hmm. And see, God knows, and he'll reach out to you when you're reaching out to him. So if you're turning to God, you're making direct contact, and it will come to you. That grace comes to you. And grace is what sets you free. It's not your human will.
And for me, when I was transported to the hospital, they weren't sure if I was going to make it on the human scene. But the nurses and the ladies who had come in to actually speak to me, because at some point I had to give consent. And I remember very few bits and pieces of that first night. And I can't explain the power that came over me to be able to do what I needed to do in order for them to admit me into detox, to then further go into rehab. But all I could do was I said, God, please, whatever your will is for me, I need you.
And that's exactly.
And knowing that Cherie's plan was over. It was over.
Yep. So just do that. And whenever you're faced with that urge, just remember, I don't have an addiction. Man is the reflection of God. Man does not have an addiction. But do you know why persecution comes? It comes for righteousness' sake. So when it comes to you, your opportunity is to turn to God. And in his power, you are free. You are made free. In your deficiency, his strength lies. And that's all you need to know. And that's the beautiful part about it. See, you don't have an addiction. You're being persecuted for righteousness' sake. What that means is the transformation is coming to you in disguise as the persecution. The light is breaking through a dark mist in your thought, and it's showing itself to you as a human condition. So your thought is not even yours. It's the world thought standing in the way of progress and spiritual understanding. But there's nothing that can impede spiritual progress. So all you need to know is, the urge comes, I'm being persecuted. Why? For righteousness' sake. So what do? Well, step number 1, what is my highest concept of God? Don't let it go. Hold on to it and don't let it go. Doesn't matter what happens to the body, to the self out there. Just do not let go of your highest concept of God for one single moment. Because that's all you're required to do, and that's all you can do. There is nothing else you can do. You can go lock yourself up for 30 days in a rehab clinic and spend tens of thousands of dollars if you feel like you need to. And maybe that will happen in some cases because that's the best possible way that God can handle you. But your responsibility is not to do anything other than to think of your highest concept of God and then let him make all the changes necessary. Because if you knew how to solve it, you'd already done it by now. Mm-hmm. So why are you consulting with the same mind that's causing it? You know that same mind that's causing the illness is the one that won't turn to God. That's the problem right there. It's blaspheming God. And that's what F.L. Rawson said. All suffering is from blaspheming God. So that same mind that thinks it has an addiction is the addiction. And it thinks it can find the solution when it, in fact, is the problem. And since it can't find the solution because it is the problem, it beats you up for not having the problem or the solution. It wants you to be it. It's ignorant of the truth. And so every time you're entertaining it, it's playing you. It's playing you like a puppet. But when you turn to God and you think of your highest concept of God, you loosen the tension. It can't play your strings anymore. And what does it say? Resist the devil and he flees. You're being tempted of the devil. Resist the devil and he flees. How? By thinking of your highest concept of God. Don't let it go. Stop thinking of how can I fix it? How can I solve my human problem? You don't have a human problem. You're asleep in a dream. It can feel very real. Trust me, I know. It really can.
But until you surrender, you throw in that white flag, you will repeat and repeat and repeat the same action.
I went through 5.5 years of trying to read every book I could, trying to go to everybody I could find, taking all the drugs, try this drug, try that drug. Okay, try this supplement, try that one. Hey, let's try this diet change. Let's try that. Let's do this. 5.5 years. Nothing worked. But one moment in God's presence was all it took. And truly being in his presence. I got warmed up for a while. It took me like 3 weeks of getting warmed up. I started to think about spirit, and I was listening to the sutras from Deepak Chopra. It really started opening me up to spiritual understanding. But it wasn't until I went live in the heat of the moment that I demonstrated God's power. Is when showtime, baby, like the urge is over me. Like, let's face it, you're not going to humanly overcome the urge. But you don't need to. You just need to think about God the whole time. Your highest concept of God, and don't let it go in your thought. It sounds crazy. You're thinking, well, that's irresponsible. I got to think about how to fix the problem because no. As long as you keep thinking about any part of the problem, whether it's to try to find the solution or to do anything with it, you are the problem. You turn to God and you think of his love. Contemplate his allness to the best of your ability, to what you know. Goodness, love, joy, peace, kindness. And you pour your heart and soul on that like a drowning man holding on to a life vest. That's how you do this thing. Because you're literally drowning in the five senses. They'll take you down into Hades. They'll suck you into the abyss of that addictive personality, but you're not the addictive personality. And only God can break that, and God will break that as long as you stop blaspheming. Because he said right there, if you blaspheme, then you can have that experience. You stop blaspheming, it's his law that you can no longer be held in bondage by that anymore. He has a law in place, and you know what a law is? It's something that works all the time. It's not a mandate, it's a law. It means forever intact. And that law is you blaspheme and you get to have the experience. You turn to God, you put him first, he sets you free. So you got to think about, what does that mean? It's to the best of your ability. The best at which you're capable with all your might, all your heart and might. God knows what all your heart and might is. You really can't fool him. If you go halfway on anything, you get halfway there. It's not good enough. You're not there. But all you got to do is when the urge comes, whatever it is, just be like, God, you're so good. I know you're right here. You're everywhere. Your love is unbreakable. Nothing came into your kingdom but love. You never would cause anything but love for your children. And you just keep running your thought in that direction. Just keep doing it to the best of your ability. And remember, just like you would be if you're drowning in the ocean and you have a life vest, you don't let it go for 1 second, because the minute you let it go, you're going to drown. That's how you hold on to the truth, is you hold on to it like you're about to get swept away in the middle of the ocean. And you have one chance to hold on to that life vest. But as long as you hold on to the truth, which is that life vest for you, then God will rescue you. And God will never give you more than you can handle. If you have the ability to hold on, then you have to hold on to the truth.
You only have that moment. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about next week.
I just came and opened up this Bible right here, okay? I just open randomly and it always shows up. It's in Luke 3, verse 3. And he came into all the country in Jordan, preaching the baptism of repentance for the remission of sins. As it is written in the book of the words of Esaias the prophet, saying, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be brought low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough ways shall be made smooth, and all flesh shall see the salvation of the Lord.
Ooh, there were so many good words in there.
That's exactly what we were talking about.
So wilderness popped out to me right away, which is loneliness, doubt, darkness. And I also picked up...
Those are all the components of your so-called addiction.
Oh, what was the other
You're
one?
in a wilderness, and you'll see the salvation of the Lord. He will make every crooked place straight, every mountain low. He will set you free. He's telling you right there in the Bible.
And what is salvation? Life, truth, and love understood and demonstrated.
Mm-hmm. There is no addiction that God can't set you free from, because you never had one. You blasphemed, and therefore you pay the consequence of the blaspheme. You stop blaspheming, and you're set free. Put it to the test. If you struggle, why not? Put it to the test. It's not going to be an impossible thing. It won't be comfortable the first time, because the comfort is to always go back into the addictive cycle. But that, again, is only because you feel guilt and shame. And that is a call for condemnation. That's a call for punishment. You're calling for your own punishment by not forgiving yourself. God already forgave you. You didn't forgive you. So forgive yourself, which means to know it no more. I know no man after the flesh. Know no man after the flesh. That's the ultimate forgiveness. You have a clean slate right now, fresh. You never had a human history. So that temptation comes and you say, it's you again. The persecution comes. This is my opportunity to prove God. That's what this actually is. God is saying, look, I'm trying to bless you. I'm trying to give you more than you think you can have. I can only fill you as large as you let me fill you. If you keep holding on to this darkness, I can't fill more light in you. This darkness is coming to you so that you can turn to me and become filled with truth. Because it says in the Gospel of Truth, the Nag Hammadi Library, it says, error pursued those who turned away in thought. That's what blaspheming God is. Turning away from his principle, his life, his truth, his love, in thought. Contemplating materiality, evil. Contemplating the mind of this world. And when you do that, darkness comes. But it comes for you to turn back to him. What did it say in Luke 3 right there? It said repentance right out of the gate. That's the first thing it said. When I opened that up, that's what it said, repentance. I don't even need to see it. I already know. But I'll read it again just because. Ready? It said this, and he came into all the country and about Jordan, preaching the baptism of repentance for the remission of sins. That right there says the whole thing right there. The baptism is the baptism of the Spirit, being born again in spirit. Repentance, remission of sins, right there. Wipe the slate clean. Can spirit ever fall from its own reflection of God? Because it is God. Does God ever stumble and fall into an addictive cycle? Then how can his reflection cannot leave his own perfection? All right, close it up. We'll bring it home.
I was just thinking about Psalms. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Although it appears to be dark on the human scene, divine life will give you the light to illuminate what is true.
This whole talk made me have a beer. Root beer.
It's a cream.
Cream soda.
You gotta cut that part out.
You gotta lighten it up a bit. I gotta throw that in there once in a while. It's a cream soda root beer. Okay, that's what I meant. Cream soda beer. Doesn't even have sugar. It has stevia in it. It's called Zevia. It's not quite as good as original root beer, but it gets the job done. Would you like some?
Go ahead.
She's able to resist. She's got strength.
It's just, don't give it power.
This doesn't have a taste. My mind says it tastes good, but my mind is not my mind.
Right.
God knows.
A liar.
God knows this is neither good nor bad for me. It's just something. I'm not going to cut that part out, by the way. I can do that because I literally have not had a beer in years. So I especially can do that.
8 years.
For her, it's been longer than me. It's been at least 3, 4, 5 probably for me. It's been a long time since I've had a beer. I do not mix alcohol with my life, ever. Unless it's like cleaning a wound or something, but I don't drink it ever. Poison. I don't drink poison.
It's not.
Well, it's not poison. Okay, right. I call it poison because I don't want to touch it. Because I already know it's called spirits for a reason.
Oh, yeah. So that's a good one. I want to bring that up. Spirits. So spirit is being divine substance, mind, divine principle. Spirits is mortal belief, evil mind.
Mm-hmm. That's why I don't drink. Because they call it spirits. I don't want to touch mortal belief.
Well, most liquor stores are like wine and spirits.
Yeah.
But, they don't
tell you which spirits are in there. Spirit of
errors, what? Hallucinations.
Spirit of Baal. Spirit of Baal. Beelzebub.
Beelzebub?
Beelzebub.
It's like the 5th time I've heard that this week.
They're having a Beelzebub at the bar.
Beelzebub.
The spirit of Baal. Baal. That's what the world worships. They worship Baal. Anyway. Don't let so-called addiction stand in the way of you receiving God's inheritance.
There is no addiction, only love.
Mm-hmm. And that's his inheritance. Because love gives you all the other things you need. Brings you all the trinkets and things you need for this world. Because God knows you have need of these things. He gives them to you.
All things will be added unto you.
Seek ye first the bar and the spirits, and all these evils shall be added unto you. It's what it says in the unholy Bible. It says, seek ye first the bar and Baal and spirits, and all these unholy demonic entities will be added unto you. You know, that,
right.
If they wrote the Bible that way for the anti-Bible, it would probably say that. That's the world's theology.
No, but that's putting it out there too clearly. Well, then again.
It's the world's theology.
No.
If you had a bad day, have a cocktail.
Take the edge off.
Yeah. You know, if you really, you know, if you're a high roller, you can snort a few lines. You know, if you're actually a low income producer, you could have some meth or something on the street. But none of that stuff ever is going to get you to God. That's the whole point. See, your real pursuit is spirit seeking its own return home. So once you understand first principle, that all of this longing in this void is to seek home, spirit, then you're like, wait, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to seek a street drug. I'm not going to seek a gambling casino. I'm not going to seek a bar. I'm not going to any of these things. I don't need none of these things. They're all just designed to trap me back into the same madness all over again and make it twice as bad. I'm just here to be the reflection of God, passing through a realm. This is not a place, it's a realm. You're passing through a realm. It's a realm of the 5 senses.
Time and space.
Time, space. And the less you identify with it, the better it will go for you. In most cases. You won't always be accepted and approved of by people. Like they definitely won't understand you. You know, you can't tell them gnosis. You can't speak to them on the level of divine science, Mary Baker would say. You can't talk to them like a Gnostic master, is what the ancients would say. You have to talk to them on the human scene where they're at, but you do it with the Beatitudes, which is you do it with goodness and love and kindness, and you give them the fruits of the Spirit, and you show them by your deeds. That's the one thing the Catholic Church does right, is that Catholic means covering over all. That's what it means. It really means cat-holic, but nobody sees the truth. What it is, it's a covering over all. And so when you go to the Catholic religion, they tell you to act more by your deeds. Most all of them drink, so they're not really like about the anti-drinking lifestyle, because I've never met a Catholic that didn't drink, but very few of them. But they do talk about good deeds and all that, and I do think that that is perfect, because that speaks louder than most people's words. So if you are kind to people and you show kindness in the world, that's a ministry unto itself. But eventually you got to get rid of all those other things too. You got to get rid of the alcohol. You got to get rid of the drugs. You got to get rid of all that stuff. Eventually, it's got to go. Because it prevents the highest.
It's of this world.
It's not going to get you to where you want to be. And all it does is say, come to me when you got a problem, I'll help you. And then it gives you another problem, which is not what you came for. Or it gives you death. It hurts somebody in the family. It's always a punisher. It's never given freedom. That's the thing. Freedom is always in spirit, not out there.
Be ye not conformed to this world, but the renewing of your mind.
Yep. Be transformed in the twinkling of an eye. All right, I'm getting tired. Got to go to the gym still. George, my son, and I go to the gym, and getting him into working out with me, it's our bonding time. Pretty soon he's going to be stronger than me. Not too soon, though. But I feel like it's coming.
That's a good one.
All right, guys. The only thing you should be addicted to is our videos. That's the only thing that God says is okay. Just
and
kidding.
I want to hear testimonies.
Yeah. You should be addicted to God's presence, actually, because that's where you're actually trying to get to. All right. Put the testimony in the comment below.